Hello. So we are making a mask, this pattern piece that was sent. And that pattern piece makes this mask, which you can make double layer, or the same mask with an opening for a filter. So taking this pattern piece, this is the top, this is the center, this is the side, so it'll fit like that, which is what you see here. So you cut it out, and what I've cut this one out is a dish towel, a new dish towel, tightly woven. I've cut mine, so I'm going to make a double layer mask. I've cut these out at the same time to save time. Okay, and when that is cut out, you can see we are moving ahead and skipping past some of the home sewing techniques, building in a little bit of industrial techniques to move you through this as quickly as possible. This notch here, I've just simply clipped with my scissors. Okay, and then marking the end of the dart here with Taylor's chalk. You could use crayon or pencil. Now you take one layer, fold it in half between those two end clips, which is part of that dart. Fold that in half. You have your clip together. Fold it with the end point being your tailor mark. And we are just going to sew from that clip to the end. If you need to pin it, please do. Also think about and practice sewing without needles or pins during this time to save time if you want to make a mask quickly. So we're going to sew from here to here. So this is the fold that you previously saw, the clip to the tailor chalk, that's your dart. And the reason for that dart is so it really starts to cup your face so you have the best coverage possible. We're going to put this on pause while I sew the other 4 darts and come back. We are back. So we have 4 darts sewn. 1, 2, that's the inside. And then 3 and 4, that's the inside. Now we're going to sew the center seam. So we put the 2 right sides, the clean side, together, and you have the inside on the outside, so you can see the dart. And we're going to sew the center seam from here down to here. Okay, so here's the center seam sewn, and you can see this has a lot of shape. The reason again for that shape is so it really fits snugly. Now I'm going to add a zigzag stitch to hold down that seam so that you don't have to iron. That once it's done, you just wash it, and you keep washing it, and you don't have to worry about it the zigzag is going to look just like that. I'm going to do one and show you now. What you do is you take that seam on the inside and you just open up the two parts of the seam allowance. So they're open, not to one side, but open. And you're going to put this in your sewing machine with the needle really focusing on this line, and the zigzag is going to go across. Okay, so showing you what the zigzag looks like. Your needle, the seam, so your needle is following that seam. Your presser foot, it's on zigzag. Zigzag, about 2.5. Coming back here, and then just following this seam right in the center, and you work through easily the curve, keeping that seam allowance open, and doing your best not to use needles so that you can sew the mask as quickly as you can. And there's your seam with the zigzag stitch. Okay, now you heard the stopping and starting. That was as you sew the zigzag on the inside. You can see that the zigzag goes back and forth over the center seam in your needle. You start it by aligning your needle there, putting down your presser foot, and sewing that zigzag. And the stopping and starting was as I was moving that fabric through the machine, going around the curve. It's quite easy with this fabric. So you can see that on the outside it forms your mask. You don't have to iron or anything like that, and it keeps it down on the inside. And I'll be back as I do the other side. Okay, back now. We have our two sides of our mask. They're identical, and ultimately we're going to have the right side and the right side together, and next we are going to sew this seam and this seam. To do that, we put the right sides together with the wrong sides showing. Aligning the top edge. The top is the straighter edge and the darts are closer to the top. This is going to be a straight single stitch, and you can hear I put my machine back and forth between a straight stitch and a zigzag. I keep it on 2.5, about 2.5 for the stitch length, so I don't have to change that. I only change back and forth between the single stitch and the zigzag. I'm doing my stitching without using pins. I said needles earlier, but pins, I'm using no pins. Holding it in place with my hands so that I can sew this as quickly as possible. There are simpler masks out there, but this one has great coverage while we need great coverage right now. Okay, so that's the single stitch at the top. It's hard to see, but if you pull it open, now you have the top edge of your mask sewn. Put it back with the right sides together, the wrong side out. Okay, the next step is we are going to make our double mask with an opening for the filter. We'll get to that in just a minute. So we're going to create this opening first. before completing this clean finish side. So this piece of elastic is 1/4 inch elastic. What I'm using for my mask, because I've run out of this elastic, is I'm using clear elastic. This is something that we use in the industry a lot. I have a lot of it, so I'm going to use it. But you will be able to get 1/4 elastic from sewing stores. I'm going to take my elastic. I've cut it 6.5 inches. So I've cut it 6.5 inches. Once it's finished being sewn, it finishes at a 5.5 inch loop. And that's good and tight, but not too tight and not too loose. So I take my loop, okay, my two ends, and I take my existing mask, and we're going to do the open end first. So here's the wrong side. I'm going to take my loop, and I'm going to put the two ends here. Okay. Okay. I'm going to start this again. Here's my mask we just did the two sides of and the top edge of. This is the inside or wrong side. There's my center seam. Here's my two darts. Here's the two sides. We're going to sew this end to be the open end of our mask first. So on the inside, I'm going to take my loop, and I'm going to put the two ends I'm going to take that edge and I'm going to fold it over 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. Okay. And on one side of it, I use my nails a lot in my hand, the heat from my hands to mold things, and that acts a little bit like an iron so that you don't have to stop and iron. So anything to make this faster, avoid. Anything to make this faster, do. Avoid doing things that make it a long process. Okay, so my folded edge is down. I take my loop and I put one end at the top of that seam, and I take the other end and place it about 3/8 of an inch away from the bottom cut edge. So this goes here. There's my loop, and I'm going to sew that down with a zigzag stitch, and then I'm going to continue the zigzag stitch all the way around there, so it's one finished edge. Okay, this is the edge that I used a zigzag stitch on, and I've got my extra thread there. Here's my loop. And when this is done, this side is going to be sewn closed. We'll do that next. And then this side, the one we just sewed, I just sewed, is caught on one side with a clean opening on the other. That will become your, there's the cat. That will become the opening for your filter. We're going to move now to the bottom edge and this side. So bringing this back over. There's your finished loop side. That will become that opening. And on this side, we're going to insert the elastic loop to the clean finished inside, catching the two ends here, and then we're going to single needle, single sew this edge and this edge. Okay, so for the next loop, it'll be placed on the right side, which will become, you'll turn inside out once it's completely clean. This is where, if you need to use pins, you can. I'm going to use it for the sake of this video. I'm going to take the next loop and place it on the side of the mask that'll be sewn closed. So there's the inside of your mask. I mean the right side of your mask. That's the inside of the mask. So the right side of your mask, that's going to be on the outside once it's done. Here's your loop, 6.5. Once it's sewn, it'll finish about 5.5. There's that center seam. There's your dart. There's the end and the underneath seam. There's your loop. Then you fold this closed. Okay. So now we're going to sew this closed and sew this closed with that single stitch, being very careful that your loop here doesn't get caught inside the seam while you're sewing. So you just want to make sure that you are only catching the ends of that elastic where your needles are. And we're going to sew and sew. Now we're sewing this closed. So this is almost done. Now this is the previous side that I sewed. This is the other side that I just had pinned the elastic in. Remove my pin. You might have removed your pin before you're done sewing, that's fine. Okay, so now this is a close with a single stitch and a single stitch underneath. And now we turn this inside out. So you have your one side with the elastic caught in clean inside the seam, and the other side with your opening and the elastic attached to just one side of that opening. Alright, so in finishing, I haven't used any iron or ironing board. Again, you want to avoid steps that might take it too long, especially for a mask that you're going to wash and wear constantly. So you want to make sure it's easy care, so no ironing. I always reiterate, I use the heat of my hands and my nails, and I can go back into that clean seam at the top, and I just move the seam up toward the top so I don't have any rolling fabric. I use the heat of my hands and my nails to crease it, and it really keeps it in place nicely. And the last step to this mask, being easy to care for and use and wear, is adding a zigzag stitch to the top edge and to the bottom edge, which will look like this mask, which has the zigzag stitch at the top and the bottom. So we're going to add that zigzag stitch to the top edge and the bottom edge. Okay, so here's our mask. The zigzag stitch has been put at the top, and at the bottom really just holds it in place and makes it really nice and flat. Another reason for that zigzag stitch at the end of the procedure at the top and bottom is on this open side where I put the elastic first. When you put that zigzag stitch at the top and come to an end, and at the bottom and come to an end, it holds this out and in place. And it also helps hold the opening a little bit more flat and flush. The remaining thing to do here is cutting your filter. We have used this air filter that we bought from Target. This is obviously backwards in the video, but it's 1900 premium, and it filters out viruses. So we took out the fabric from the inside of this metal wire casing and really got that accordion pleat that you saw on the inside of the filter, just opening it up and using this pattern piece. You'll notice that this goes this way. The reason it's cut diagonally is because on the diagonal it has a little bit of give, so it'll mold inside. If it's cut with these lines straight up and down, there's no stretch. This way there's a little bit of stretch, so it'll mold a bit inside of your mask. This is a little bit like a bra or a bathing suit top for women, where when you take an insert, you really have to fold it in half, and it's a lot of feeling with the hands inside the opening, and you just put it in there, and it does take some finesse to get it inside. You just keep fitting it and pushing it on the inside. And once it's in, then you have to open up that fold on the inside. So here's my completed mask. My filter is in there. It's hard to see, but that's part of it at the end. It's really a firm mask. And now I can go out. I can replace that filter, taking it in, throwing it away, putting in a new one, washing the mask as much as needed. I don't know how long a filter lasts. You would have to do more research on that. I've been throwing my filter away every couple of wears, but I'm not a professional on that, so you need to do research there. Be safe, stay healthy.